Hello everybody, welcome back to Ash's Glitter Factory. Today I will be reading chapter 31 from the Grimrose Girls book. Let's get on with it. Chapter 31 is called Ella. Ella had kept the crystals and candles hidden in the loose board underneath the bed in her attic. The attic wasn't big, but it was the only thing in the house that belonged to her and no one else. The few things she'd kept after they moved, some figurines her father had collected, some dresses and coats for winter, all mismatched, old, and repaired more times than she could count, the sewing machine that had belonged to her mother, which she'd smuggled among, and kitchen things so Sharon wouldn't notice she'd kept it, underneath the bed, hidden deep under the floor, were Ella's more precious things. The money she kept hidden, the small amount she'd managed to get when she was paid for sewing something, for baking cookies in the kitchen on a weekend when nobody was there. She also hid her mother's button collection, with big white ones and small green ones in the shape of strawberries or bearing coats of arms, all different from one another. There were gifts she received from Rory, Ari, Yuki over the years, all kept far away from reach, because that was the only way Ella was allowed to keep anything in her life, tucked away where not even she could see them. On Monday, Ella spent all day counting the chairs around her, counting the steps she took up and down to go to different rooms, counting the windows on the opposite side of the castle. Counting kept her calm, because even though there were numbers that she didn't like, which in her anxiety she'd stumble over, numbers were still infinite. They stretched forever, and if she just kept counting, everything would be okay. And then Nani asked if she wanted to go to the archives, and Ella couldn't say no. Couldn't say no to confirming the thing she already knew was true. The infinite list of dead girls kept running through her mind as she and Nani made their way back to the library to meet Yuki and Roy. Staying at school longer would make her late, and she feared what would happen at home if that happened. But this was more important. Nani didn't wait for them to be settled around the usual library table they'd claimed before she burst. All the girls on the list are dead, Nani announced, throwing her notebook on the table towards Yuki and Roy. You just came back from the archives. Ella darted her eyes in the direction of Yuki. Ella hadn't really spoken to her since their last argument, except to exchange notes in class. It felt strange fighting with Yuki. And? Yuki said, her voice ice cold as she looked up. There are too many coincidences, Nani said. Several girls have drowned, Yuki stated. This is not new. Or are you saying there's more than one story where that happened? We can make anything fit into the theory if we want to. So you're saying you think these deaths are only coincidences? Ella said. I'm saying over the course of 100 years, accidents will happen, Yuki replied. You're saying that what happened to Ari is some conspiracy theory that the book predicts, that the students' deaths connect them to some magical fairy tale. Ella knew it seemed like she was trying hard to believe in something and what Ari had left behind, but that didn't mean her theories were wrong. Ella looked at Nani for help, but Nani didn't offer any. I know how hard it is to believe this, said Ella. Even if there was a killer using it as inspiration, this goes back ages ago, and no one even seems to remember the deaths. It's just, Yuki stopped. We need to look at this the other way around. We find proof, then we form theories. Maybe the deaths are connected, but what does it mean? Ella took a deep breath. It was a good question. What did it mean? When she talked to Miss Paduva, she'd asked the same thing. As far as Ella was concerned, it meant something was wrong with Grimrose. She just had to convince everyone of that. Did you find anything? She asked, finally trying to approach the subject another way. Did you try to figure out where Ari could have found the book? No, but that won't get us anywhere anyway, Yuki answered. Irene was her closest friend, and now we know how she liked to keep secrets. You must have seen her with the book at one point, Nani said logically. Just looking at the amount of things she's written down, she must have been working on this for a while, which meant she would have worked on it while Edric and Ari were still dating. She remembered how heartbroken Ari was when it came to an end, and how much she cried even though Ella couldn't really understand what it was with Edric in the first place. What they liked about each other, how it worked. Ella had rarely felt a romantic pull towards anybody, but when she did, it was a person who she could like first and foremost as a friend. Someone she could talk to, someone she admired. No gender specified. Romance and attraction were wildly diverse experiences for everybody, and it was hard enough figuring them out without added judgment, so she never said anything to Ari. She was out out of the room a lot, Rory said, musing out loud. Like, you wouldn't see her for hours. She was always searching for all the unexplored places of the castle. Ari had a checklist of rooms and secret passageways her mother knew back in the day. Naughty blinked. Passageways? And you know those? Ari never showed them to anybody, Yuki said, and Ella thought she detected a hint of bitterness in Yuki's tone. But maybe she was only imagining it. If you figure out one of the Grimrose's secret passageways, it's yours to keep, and you have to let people discover for themselves. So, is that like a rule, Nani asked, her voice uncertain. I'm sorry, I'm really trying to understand. Is this some rich people thing? How should I know, Yuki snapped. You will go here, Nani pointed out. If anything, you're the ones who know about the world of a school of rich and privileged kids where everyone lives in a castle. You don't know anything about us, Yuki turned to Nani. I study here because my stepmother is the headmistress. Ella is here because she got a scholarship. Ella blushed at the mention, but Nani paid no mind, turning to Rory. And you? Rory shrugged, putting her feet up on the table while she leaned against the chair with a grin. Oh, I'm absolutely the rich and privileged kid. Nani sighed, one that sounded half angry, half tired. I can't help you if you can't help yourselves. Well, there's another way, Ella said. Every head went towards her, and Ella felt herself almost shrinking in her seat. I talked to Miss Meduva, Ella said. She's the psychic in contest. Ari had been to see her, too. Her daughter is on the list. Yuki blinked, those big raven eyes fixed on her. For the first time, Ella saw something she did not recognize. There's something that made Yuki look different, strange, like Ella didn't know her at all. You told a psychic what was happening here? Yuki asked. What were you thinking, Ella? She lost a daughter, Ella said, and Ari went there first. And? Rory said, her eyebrows rising. What did she say? She says that whatever is happening, it has to do with Grimrose. That much she's sure. And it has to do with the book, exactly, like the list of deaths proves. That much we figured out, Nani muttered, her discontent. This is a lot bigger than just Ari, Ella insisted. It's not just about one or two girls that died. It's about all of us. We aren't dead, Rory said. But Ari still put us on the list, Ella snapped back, surprised at her own insistence. She figured out something. Ella's last words fell into silence, and she took a deep breath. Feeling her throat lump again, it was like shouting at a wall. I told her I wanted to talk to Ari, Ella finally said. She gave me things, so we can do a ritual in the light of the next full moon. The silence around Ella was deafening, and then Yuki started laughing. You've got to be kidding me, Yuki said, disdain dripping from her voice. Her eyes were sharp, angry, unrecognizable. You want us to talk to Ari's ghost? Ella blushed. Well, not exactly, but Yuki got up. This has gone too far, she said, and her words were cold. I know we're grieving, I know we miss her, but we can't keep doing this. A ritual? Ella? Really? Ella felt her cheeks burn, half in shame and half in indignation. Too. We have to try. We can't fail her. Wake up, Yuki shouted, gesturing wildly to nothing. We already have. She's dead. The words echoed around the silence of the library, reverberating through the edges and the spaces between the books, and all that Ella could think was, we did. We failed her. She's right. There's nothing we can do now. This has to stop, she said. No more fairy tale talk. We grieve Irene like normal people, and even if someone did come after her, we're not going to be the ones who find out who. We are done with this. She picked up her bag, swung it over her shoulder, and brushed past Ella, who still had words stuck in her throat. I expected better from you, Ella said quietly. Yuki heard her. She stopped, turned, and looked directly at her. Then you expected wrong. Ella was at the bus stop, already late. She kept looking at her watch to stop the tears from coming again. She didn't know how to help, and helping was the only thing she'd ever been good at. The inside of her cheek was raw from biting it. Ella could taste blood. She deserved this, deserved every piece of it. It's what she got for thinking she could find a solution when no one else could. It's what she got for believing. The bus wasn't coming either, adding insult to injury. If she'd just run faster, if she'd left 5 minutes earlier, if she hadn't kept arguing, if she'd just been better, none of this would have happened. When she looked up from her watch, a horse was staring her right in the face. Ella jumped back, and the horse backed off. The rider, though, continued to look at her, grinning a half-amused smile. You afraid of horses? Frederick's voice rang from above, interrupting her inner thoughts. The anxiety loop that was forming in her mind. She tried finding a voice. I'm afraid of horses that stand in the way of me being able to see rather the bus is coming. Ah, I see. Frederick maneuvered the horse so it stepped aside the road free. Ella felt dizzy as she followed the horse's march. Her head was beginning to ache from holding back tears, from worry and restlessness. What are you catching the bus for? I need to go home. I'd forgotten you lived in town. He smiled at her. What are you doing? Ella asked. Exercising the horse, Frederick answered. It's Monday, which means we get to pick an irrationally stupid hobby that only rich people care about and practice twice a week. Ella laughed at that, being suddenly reminded that Rory had once said the same thing about fencing. Grimrose had a fencing team, a horse riding team, a gymnastics club, and a ballet class. Ella avoided anything that made her truly exercise. Running was absolutely out of the question for her, so she never even looked properly at the list of activities Grimrose offered. I didn't know you liked writing, Ella said. There's a lot of things you don't know about me, Eleanor. Ashworth, he said, his smile smug. Of all his freckles, the only effect he accomplished was making Ella laugh. Right, no one pretending to be the mysterious, tall, dark stranger. You're nothing if not tall. That's my only quality, Frederick said. Frederick asked, sighing dramatically. Shows you what I know about what girls like. Dark, brooding guys overrated, Ella told him, and honestly, mysterious and slightly creepy. Would you date a girl who you knew nothing about? Not a girl or a guy, Frederick said, making her smile again. Are you okay? You look a little worried there. Who, me? That's just my face. He laughed. Ella looked again at the road, wondering if the bus was coming, how much longer she could hold herself together for the sake of someone else. Do you really need to get home? Ella turned her attention back to Frederick, nodding. I have a curfew. I can take you. The offer took her by surprise, and Ella looked up, feeling her throat. Not that Ella was afraid of climbing up behind him to get on the horse. She knew how to deal with horses. She had carrots back home. She was more afraid of the consequences. Here was Frederick, probably thinking she was someone else completely, someone who came to school and studied there like all the others, someone whose life was not a farce, not a part to play. And sure, he invited her to the ball, but because they were friends, because they were partners in class, because he was the nicest boy Ella had ever met, and there was nothing more to it. And just by having him believe that, she was betraying him every step of the way. Come on, he said. Are you really afraid of the horse? I'm afraid of the boy controlling it. Frederick blinked, but he offered his arm nonetheless, his hand outstretched so she could reach it. She had faced worse than this. She took his hand and Frederick pulled her up. It was one smooth movement, and she settled behind Frederick, her knees beneath her skirt brushing against his legs. And she looked away, face hot, his back pressed against her, and her heart fluttered. You all right? Ella nodded, her head swimming again, not trusting herself to speak. And then they were off. The horse galloped beneath her, her hoofs beating against the ground. Ella felt a rush of wind against her face as she held on tight. Soon enough, too soon, they neared her part of town. And Frederick slowed the horse to a walk. Ella touched his arm slightly. I think it's better if you leave me here. Frederick turned his head slightly, and their faces were so close she could feel his warm breath on her face. You don't want me to see where you live? A girl's got to keep her secret, she replied in a light tone. Ella felt like he was about to push for more, but he shook her head. She didn't want him ruining this. She wanted to live this dream, at least for a while. Let me have this, she thought selfishly. Let me have this one thing, this one small paradise. You sure you're okay here? He asked, and Ella felt her muscles relax. Yes, she replied. Thank you, really. Anytime you need, Eleanor. She smiled, and her hands gripped his as she slid off. His fingers were sweaty from holding the reins, but smooth, not like hers. Ella had little scars over most of her hands from scrubbing the floors or washing the curtains or from cleaning out the stables. More scars than she could count. They appeared seemingly out of nowhere, already reddened with the blood dry on her knuckles. Frederick looked at her hands and said nothing. Thanks for being the white knight, Ella said, looking up at him, hiding her hands behind her, afraid of what he might think. Frederick nodded his head again, and Ella watched his horse turn around before she ran the rest of the way home. Okay, everyone, that was the end of chapter 31. I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye!